Hi there. Today I'm going to talk a little about UV and fluorescent materials. It seems to me that there's been quite a lot of misunderstandings and quite a lot of different myths about how UV and fluorescent stuff actually works. So what I'm going to try to do today is I'm going to try to explain what UV and what fluorescence really is, and how I think the effect of these two different things actually work. First of all, I'm going to talk a little about how light and what light really is. Light light has different wavelengths, and what you can see here is you have X-ray, you have ultraviolet rays, you have this small band here represents the light that our eyes actually is able to detect. Then you have infrared rays, and then you have radar. So this is a representation of all the different wavelengths that the sun emits. Okay. And only this tiny band here, compared to all that there is what our eyes can actually see. Up here you have the ultraviolet rays, the UV. Good. So, what actually happens when light hits something and your eyes detect it is that take this fly for instance. This is a fairly big fly. It's orange and it's green. What happens when light hits this fly is that some portion of the light is actually absorbed and some of it is reflected. The only part of the light that hits this that is reflected is the part I can see. That is why the ostrich hurls here are orange. It's because all the other light that hits the orange hurls here are absorbed, and only the orange is reflected back into my eyes, where my eyes sensory cells can absorb it. Good. So eyes detect colors that comes from mirrors all around. So everything is kind of is actually kind of like mirrors. They only reflect different types of colors. Good. So, ultraviolet rays is actually ultraviolet light is actually just kind of like green light. It's a color, but it's not a color that we can see because we lack the correct receptor cells in our eyes to actually see it. So when I shine this ultraviolet light at the camera, what you see is not the ultraviolet light. What you see is the other types of light that this flashlight emits, because it sends out blue light as well. So what you see is blue light. You don't see the ultraviolet light. What I've come to know is I've taken some time to do some fairly thorough research on this subject, and I could only find one article from a large American university that had a study on salmon and trout and their ability to see UV light. And that study clearly stated that the only time in their life where trout and salmon are able to see UV light is when they're very small, before they actually mature into start migrating, and then when they have reached a certain size and become mature and re-enters the streams to spawn or are going to spawn. And even then, when they're small and when they're ready to spawn, even then they only have a very small portion of their eyes that can actually see UV light. So this study clearly states that trouts and salmon can see UV light in very certain and specific situations and periods of their life, but it's still a very insignificant part of their visual sensory apparatus that is actually used for this. So the conclusion I have to draw here is that UV light is not something that fish that actually hunt, or salmon and sea trout that actually hunt, will be using. Good. I can't say, I haven't found any study on any other species, but for sea trout and salmon, the science, it clearly states this. Good. So UV light is a part of a spectrum. Fluorescence is a completely different story. Fluorescence is actually something that a material can be. It's not a wavelength. It's not a it's not some kind of light. It's something. It's an effect that certain things can have. When I shine my UV light here, this fly has the UV, the fluorescence effect. And what the fluorescence effect really is I shine a light to this, and what happens is the UV light and the other parts of light that hits this is actually entering here and then re-emitted. It's reflected back, but in a different wavelength. This means that when you have fluorescence, you can actually take some ultraviolet light, and when it hits the fluorescent material, it actually changes downwards in wavelength, making it able for us to see, and making the fish able to see it as well. So fluorescence makes sense. Fluorescence makes sense according to flies and to lures and stuff like that, because it actually takes a part of the light spectrum that wasn't visible to us before and changes it into something that is visible. This is an effect that can actually have an effect. This is something that can actually have an effect. So to sum up, I think that all this talk about we need to have UV materials because that's the only way and fish will go for their fly straight away and stuff like that, I think that's actually basically just someone trying to sell you more materials than you actually need. I don't think it has the effect or the magical or the really extraordinary properties that some people are trying to tell. I don't believe that. I don't believe that materials that reflect UV light has any effect whatsoever. Because if that was true, then white, for instance, would be the best color of all, because white is basically just, it's no color at all, it's basically just something that reflects anything. It also reflects all parts of the UV spectrum. So white would be the only color that would work anytime, and it would be amazingly more effective than all the other if that was the case. I don't think UV has any effect, and I don't think materials that actually can reflect UV light is something that is something that is not even scientifically proven to be better than anything else. What I do think is that the fluorescent materials can have some merit. There can be some effect to this fluorescence, and it's quite possible that fluorescent materials actually are better and give some effect that the fish really like. So my conclusion on this is, if you take a material and you shine your UV light to it, then if you can see the effect, then there probably is an effect, and there probably will be an effect for your flies and quite possibly for the fish to go for that more. But the UV stuff, I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that certain materials treated the right way, so it has the UV effect, is more efficient than anything else. They're just more expensive. And that's pretty much what I'm pretty certain is the truth here. So I hope you can use this and we'll take this for what it is. It's something that I've spent quite a lot of time reading up on this and trying to sort out what exactly is what and stuff like that. So please leave a comment if you think that yeah, I'm right or if I'm wrong. I would like to hear, even if you have some scientific insight that I've missed. Please state them in the comments box. Well, those were the words. Thank you again for listening. Bye.